Hi, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of Before the Vote. We have had 9 episodes together so far, and this is the last one. And like the previous episode, it is just going to be me talking today, no interviews or anything like that. But I just wanted to take a minute to thank you all for listening, first of all, and to also go over everything that we've talked about in the last 9 episodes and to kind of wrap it all up into a neat package and also give you some next steps moving forward to kind of answer the question of what now, what can I do right now in this moment to get plugged into government as a teenager. But before we get into all that, as always, I wanted to take a minute to remind you all of the survey that is linked in the description box down below. It is an anonymous, super quick Google form that you can just fill out to let me know what you think of Before the Vote and if it's accomplishing the goals that I hope that it's accomplishing. Like I said, it's anonymous and it's super short. It'll take you maximum 2 minutes to fill out. So please, 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 when you finish this video, go down there, click that link, and fill out the survey. Thank you so much in advance. So now let's get into the content of the episode. So the first thing that I wanted to do was kind of give an overview of all the highlights from the previous 9 episodes because we've covered a lot of ground, and so I kind of wanted to wrap it up neatly so that you can kind of have an idea of ways you can get plugged in moving forward. So we have had a bunch of conversations in the last few months. We've heard from a state senator, 2 state representatives, a judge, and a former city mayor. We talked about what their jobs entail and how they got involved in their jobs, how they got plugged into government from the start, and also how teens can help aid them in doing their jobs. We also had conversations with fellow teens on tangible ways for teens to get plugged into government, and all of those conversations were super insightful and helped us really realize how we can get plugged into government. Let's just go over a few of the big points that came up throughout those episodes. So the first one is one that ran through basically the entire series, and that is that we all have a part to play no matter our age. No matter if you're 13 years old or if you're 60, as citizens of this country, we all have a part to play, and there's a way for all of us to get plugged in even before we have the right to actually vote, because we kind of can think that, oh, I can't vote, so there's nothing really for me to do, so I'm just going to tune out politics, and I'm going to tune out government affairs. But actually, there's a ton of ways that you can get plugged in before you can vote. So we all have a part to play, and it's part of our civic duty to play that part. And what that part exactly encompasses is something that we've been unpacking throughout the series and all the different aspects of how you can get plugged in. Another major point that came up, especially in our conversations with representatives and senators, was that you should really know your representatives and senators. You should know your state representatives and senators, those that go to your state legislature, and also those that represent your state in Congress. You should know who they are, you should try and figure out their contact information, and if you have an issue that you would like them to address, send them an email, call them. You can also write them a letter. Just find some way to access them and let you know what you're thinking because they want to hear from you, and their job is to represent you, so the best way for them to do that is to hear from you directly. And teens are especially important in this because teens have a unique perspective that older age groups just simply don't. They're more aware of certain issues that pertain specifically to teens, such as the teen mental health crisis. So by you informing your representatives of these issues that specifically impact teens or your community or whatever, they're able to better represent those in Congress or in your state legislature to get bills created and laws passed that address that issue. And this is definitely something that I need to work on as well, is making sure that I know who my representatives and senators are because they can change semi-frequently, and so it's important to keep that information up to date, so that's something I definitely hope to do more in the future. Another major way that you can get plugged into government is to just stay informed on what's happening in politics and what's happening in your country and staying informed on issues that you care about so that you're just in the know and you're an informed citizen, and that makes you more aware of issues that need to be addressed, which then can help guide you in what you need to talk to your representative or senator about. So just staying informed makes you a more well-rounded person, a more educated person, and a better citizen, really. So that kind of goes along with the next point, which is to use social media to your benefit. There's a lot of great resources on social media for ways to get informed. There's a lot of accounts on social media that can help you get informed, but one thing that I always have to mention with that is that a lot of accounts can be biased, so make sure you fact check your information but there are a lot of great resources that you can plug into using Twitter or Instagram or whatever media that you have to figure out what's going on in the world and get information and get quick updates as well on what's happening. And you can also use social media to your benefit to share issues you care about, share causes you care about, share information about them, share ways for people to get plugged into helping that issue out. It's a great tool to disseminate information and to help educate people. Another really great area to get plugged into is local politics. I think we oftentimes forget about local politics and forget about our local government, but they are present and they are the most direct way for you to get plugged in and to see results that directly impact you and your area. That's the most specific form of government that you can get to you and your family and your space and your community. So getting plugged in by just volunteering in your area or seeing if maybe your mayor's office has a way that you can get plugged in to attend city council meetings or something like that. Just find some way to get plugged in and get educated about what's going on in your community and ways that you can help things out and ways that you can just share your voice and share teens' voices. And then lastly, this goes along with that, but you can also get plugged into youth and government programs in your school or in your state. There are lots of great opportunities out there to get plugged into those. The YMCA hosts youth and government programs in just about every state. The youth legislature and youth judicial programs, so you can get plugged into those. A lot of schools also have clubs that center around politics. A lot of schools also have student councils that you can get plugged into. And all of these resources just teach you about how government works and how policy works and how decision making works. And that just makes you more well-rounded and gives you a better sense of how politics works in the real world so that you're more educated on those processes and have kind of gotten a feel for what it feels like to be a decision maker, which helps you be a more well-rounded citizen and a more prepared citizen for when you do have the right to vote. So those were some of the themes and ideas that ran through a lot of the episodes in the Before the Vote series. But now I want to give you a few practical next steps for what you can do, because that was a lot of information and that's a lot of things to kind of put on your to-do list. But there's a few small things that you can do in the here and now to become a more involved citizen and a more educated citizen. So the first practical next step is to choose a news source to become a more informed citizen. So my favorite way to get informed is to listen to podcasts. There are a lot of great news podcasts out there. You can also read online articles or physical newspapers. There are lots of sources out there for getting your news online. But again, any kind of news source is going to have some sort of bias, whether it be a podcast or an online source. So just make sure you're aware of that when you're consuming that information, that it's tainted with some kind of bias, even if it's not extreme. There's going to probably be something there that's kind of swaying it towards the left or the right. So sometimes it's really good to read the same story from multiple different sources that you know have a left bias and then one that has a right bias, so they kind of balance out and you can kind of weed out what the real facts are. So just choose a news source that is easy for you to access on a daily to weekly basis to get your news, to be in the know, and to just kind of get an idea of what's going on in your area, in your state, in your country, and in your world. The next tangible next step is to choose an issue that you care about and find out how to get plugged in. So it can be any kind of topic that you want to dive into, that you're really passionate about, and that you'd like to see change in. So you can get plugged in through social media. You can find an online community of people who are also passionate about that issue to talk about the issue with, to learn from. You can also do research on the issue. You can also join an interest group in your area. You can volunteer with an organization that addresses that issue, or you can even get involved in a protest with that issue. There are tons of ways to get involved, and chances are, no matter how niche your issue is, there's going to be someone out there that also is passionate about it as well, so it's great to make relationships based off of that passion. And then the last tangible next step is to see what ways you can get plugged into school programs and or local politics. So I talked about that previously, but it's super helpful to get plugged into those youth and government programs in your school or in your state, and to also maybe explore ways that you can get plugged into your local city council or your mayor's office or whatever it may be, because that's really going to teach you how government works and it's going to give you some first-hand experience so you're a more well-rounded citizen. And it will also allow you to have some influence in making decisions that directly impact you, which is a really cool thing. So those were all the practical next steps. And the last thing that I wanted to address is this whole series we've been talking about ways that you can get plugged into government before the vote, before you have the ability to vote when you're under 18. But I also think it's important to address how to vote, because as soon as you turn 18, you get the right to vote, and that is such a powerful, powerful tool that everybody should utilize. So I did want to talk a little bit about how to go about registering to vote and things like that because that's so important. So first, local elections take place all the time. Presidential elections take place every 4 years, and congressional elections take place every 2 years. So representatives in Congress are reelected every 2 years, and senators in Congress are reelected every 6 years. So just keep an eye out for when elections in your area are taking place so that you can make sure you're registered to vote once you're eligible. So you can register to vote as soon as you turn 18, and you should totally do that. If an election is approaching and you will turn 18 before or on the day of the election, you can go ahead and register for that. So you don't have to actually be 18 when you register, but you just have to turn 18 by the time the election comes. So just check the rules on that and make sure you're keeping up to date on those deadlines. The registration deadlines will come before the actual election does. So you do just want to keep an eye on that to make sure that you're registered to vote, even if your birthday kind of messes things up and makes it a little confusing, because you don't have to be 18 when you register, but you do have to be 18 when the election comes. So to register, it is super easy. Most states have an online form. That's what I registered using, and it was super quick, super easy. You can also get a physical form to register with. So it's not a complicated process at all. It's super convenient. So just make sure you do that. One thing I do want to mention though, especially for college students, is that if you're moving out of state, you do have to re-register. So every time you move, you have to update your registration info. So if you're moving out of state for college or any other type of thing, you will need to do that in order to vote. For more registration resources, I am including a link in the description box to vote.org where you can check the voter registration rules for your state. You can see if you're already registered, if you forgot. You can see when the registration deadlines are for your state. And you can also actually use that site to register to vote. I'm also going to be including a link to Rock the Vote, which has a really good FAQ section on voter registration, and I used it to get some of my information that I just talked about as well. So once you turn 18, make sure you register to vote. Make sure you remain an involved citizen both before the vote and after the vote. Super important because that's a lifelong responsibility. So that's all the information I wanted to cover in this very last episode of the Before the Vote series. Before I close it out, I did want to just remind you one last time about that survey. It's going to be linked in the description box below. An anonymous Google form, max 2 minutes to fill out. Just let me know what you think about this series. I would really, really appreciate your response. Thank you all so much for listening to this series and for being a part of this journey with me. I hope you got even just a little bit of information out of it that you didn't know before. That is my goal. I hope you feel more empowered as a citizen to use your voice to make change because we all have a part to play in making our government successful. So thank you so much for being part of this series. I really appreciate you tuning in and listening to me talk about all these different things and listening to all my guests talk about all these different super important topics. I really appreciate you. I hope you feel empowered and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. So this is Bella Gentry signing off as your host for the last time. Bye guys.